back to our 7th video in our Hebrews series. It's crazy that we are already halfway through the book of Hebrews, but yeah, before we get started, as usual, I am Emma. I am the person who runs the channel, as you could probably guess, and also the Instagram blog Tea and God. And I just wanted to introduce myself in case there are any people who are new here. And as usual as well, we also have our tea of the day, and I did a kind of dumb thing. I opened it before I showed it, so it looks kind of sad, but it's my last one. So this is the Stash pomegranate and raspberry tea. It's pretty dang good. It steeps in like 1 to 3 minutes, so it's pretty great. The only downside is it is a very, you can't really tell how deep of a red it is. You have to maybe put it closer. It's a pretty deep red, so yeah, no, it looks like he murdered somebody, but it's okay. So before I ramble anymore, let's hop right into Hebrews chapter 7. But before I do that, I would just like to say that I am again using a journaling Bible by Crossway Books, and it is the English Standard Version, in case you're curious as to which version I am reading. And yes, let's hop right on in. So, chapter 7, starting in verse 1, says, "For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. And to him Abraham apportioned a part of everything. He is first, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness, and he is also King of Salem, that is, King of Peace. He is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he continues a priest forever." And sorry, this is a really random tangent, but I really think that how verse 3 kind of highlights how important your family was back in the day. Like, you were kind of, who you were was determined exactly by who your parents were, who their parents were, who just everybody was. And I think it's really interesting. But sorry, I'm going to continue on now. Into verse 4, it says, "See how great this man was, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave 1/10 of the spoils. And those descendants of Levi who received the priestly office have a commandment in the law to take tithes from the people, that is, from their brothers, though these also are descended from Abraham. But this man, who does not have his descent from them, received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. It is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. In other cases, tithes are received by mortal men, but in the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives." I'm going to pause there for a second. So in verses 6 and 7, I think it's kind of... so I'm going to elaborate. So I had notes on chapter 7, verses 6 and 7, but I like how the New Living put it better, so I'm going to read chapter 7, verses 6 and 7 in the New Living Translation, which says, "But Melchizedek, who was not a descendant of Levi, collected 1/10 from Abraham. And Melchizedek placed a blessing upon Abraham, the one who had already received the promises of God. And without question, the person who has power to give a blessing is greater than the one who is blessed." And I think I really like how that one puts it, how it says, he who had received the promises of God, because it's just another reminder to us that we were all given different spiritual gifts from God, and it's just interesting that each of us have gifts that kind of tie into who we are as a person, I feel like. But anyways, random tangent. And if you guys are interested in learning what your spiritual gifts are, again, tangential conversations, I will link a quiz down below that I took a couple of years ago that I thought was really accurate. Some people didn't find it as accurate, but I think it's cool to learn about. So, moving on into, I think I was in verse 8, so I'll start there. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal men, but in the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives. One might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, for he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Now, if perfection had been attainable through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need would there be for another priest to arise after the order of Melchizedek, rather than one named after the order of Aaron? For when there is a change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. For the one whom these things are spoken belonged to another tribe, from which no one has ever served at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, and in connection with that tribe, Moses said nothing about priests. So, I'm assuming that most of you know this, but verse 14 is highlighting how in the Old Testament law, the priests were told that they could only come from the tribe of Levi, and the high priest could only come from the line of Aaron in the tribe of Levi. So that's just, yeah. Continuing on. Into verse 15, it says, "This becomes even more evident when another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become a priest, not on the basis of legal requirement concerning bodily descent, but by the power of an indestructible life. For it is witnessed of him, you are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek." I'm going to pause there. So verse 16 says, "Who has become a priest not on the basis of legal requirement concerning bodily descent, but by the power of an indestructible life." And I think that it's really cool that the power that Jesus had to, raising from the dead is the same power that's made accessible to us through his blood to fight the devil, which I think is something that a lot of us forget. And we kind of forget that, like, we are not just weak little warriors, or we all forget that we aren't just weak little tiny portions of the world, and we all think that, the outside world's going to destroy us, but in reality, like, God's already won the battle against the outside world, and we're actually the victors. And when we live in fear and not realizing that we've already taken the victory, it really, really limits us and what we can do with the power that we have through Christ's blood over us. And I don't know, it's an interesting thought. But continuing on into verse 18, it says, "For on the one hand, a former commander is set aside because of its weakness and uselessness." A former commandment is set aside because of its weakness and uselessness. "For the law made nothing perfect. But on the other hand, a better hope is introduced, through which we draw near to God." In verse 19, I think it's, again, I'm assuming that most of you know this if you guys have been in the faith for a while, but the reason that the old commandments never worked was the way they were supposed to is because only one man could actually fulfill all of those commandments. And obviously that was Jesus, and that was kind of the reason that, I think that's kind of one of the reasons that God gave the Israelites the Old Testament law originally, was so that they would be able to recognize who the Messiah was, because he was fulfilling things in the law that had never been done before. Like, there was a specific ritual that the priest would have to do if somebody who came to them who was healed from leprosy. And that had never happened until Jesus came. Yet a lot of the, priests who are supposed to know the scriptures like that, and they did, they just didn't recognize that the scriptures were coming into fulfillment. So, continuing on into verse 20, it says, "And it was not without an oath. For those who formerly became priests were made without an oath. But this one was made a priest with an oath by the one who said to him, 'The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever.' This makes Jesus the guarantor of a better covenant." Okay. "The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office. But he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them." And I think it's also important in verse 24 and 25 that their trying of the Old Testament laws is because Christ completed them. In the Old Testament, which again I'm assuming all of you know, we're given the Ten Commandments and a much, much, much longer and more in-depth list of laws. But the Ten Commandments are kind of the ones that we stick around with the most. But in reality, in Jesus' fulfillment of the Old Testament law, the Ten Commandments, they're still important pieces of the faith, but they aren't what we're told to live by anymore. Jesus told us that we need to love God and love people, and the reason that those two are the most prominent is because in fulfilling both of those things, we will be doing what the law is telling us to do, the Ten Commandments, essentially, if that makes sense. Continuing on, into verse 26. It says, For it was indeed fitting that we should have such a high priest, holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. He has no need, like those high priests, to offer sacrifices daily, first for his own sins, and then for those of the people, since he did this once for all when he offered himself up. For the law appoints men in their weakness as high priests, but the word of the oath, which came later than the law, appoints a son who has been made perfect forever." And verses 26 through 28 remind us that because Christ is sinless, he can be our priest forever. It's not like we have to keep having a new priest come in, because Christ is our eternal high priest. And in closing, I guess, as you uncover who God is, preparing you to be, I hope that you guys each have the courage to die to your old self and to live each day as a new creation and grow into who it is that God is molding you to be. And yeah, that's kind of the end of our study of Hebrews chapter 7 for today. And I'm gonna shift a little bit. I hope that you guys were able to get something out of that, and as usual, if you guys did get something out of it, feel free to leave a like on the video, and if you know somebody that you think could learn something from it, feel free to send it over to them. And if you guys would like to join our little tea and God loving community, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and check out my Instagram blog down below, where we have more daily content related to tea and Jesus. So yeah, if you leave this video with nothing else, I hope you guys know how loved and precious and cherished you are by the God who created you. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, or morning, or afternoon, or night, whatever time it is when you're watching this. I hope that you guys have a great rest of the time that I'm going to stop rambling and let you guys go. But I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.